So everything's about then obviously.
Starts as
So.
And this.
My phone real quick.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not sitting on there.
I thought he was just gonna.
Well, there is.
So I will say this, you guys can hear me okay?
Yes.
So I'm gonna say this, on record, but, since there's just four of us, we do have a majority of the vote here. But perspective, if one of us votes against it, then for. Is it one of you votes against it, is it decline then?
I think so. I need to check to make sure that it's out there.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think it is, I guess before it is.
But is it necessary?
Necessarily. Right. You know, if the motion doesn't carry,
Oh, the motion doesn't carry.
but it was not denied, it wouldn't be, it's not either or, so if it was. Typically, if there's a motion to approve and it fails, it doesn't mean it's denied, it means that there's no decision.
Okay.
That's right, same line.
Here to be that.
Oh, I didn't know why they. Oh. Okay, why don't you start with that then?
I should,
I think
yeah,
you should.
yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, I only saw the first two words, so, or the first three, that was enough, yeah. Are we ready? Yes. Okay, I will call to order the June 18th, 2025 special meeting of the planning board, and I will start with a roll call to my left.
Bob Hayes.
Paul John.
And Stacy LeBlanc. So before we get into the agenda, I think Bob has a statement he would like to read to the board and all those present and the public.
I was hoping that we'd have a better representation of the full planning board. I was prepared to read this later after discussion and prior to voting. But I have written this: I am abstaining from voting on this 3-story, 8-structure housing development project before this planning board for 2 reasons. One is based upon findings, and the other because of I am biased. I am bothered by 2 findings, one required to be addressed and the other not required to be addressed. Traffic impact has been addressed upon criteria of posted speed, which is certainly less than the more commonly observed actual speed. Even though not required, one should expect a development project to reflect the purpose and characteristics identified by zone and code. I'm bothered by the earlier avoidance of engaging in a comprehensive planning process that has now been initiated. Instead, our still recognized comp plan 2010 was in part updated. Because I was involved in challenging the subsequent and questionable process of rezoning and controversial application of form-based codes, I admit to being biased. I applaud the comp plan process now underway. With that said, I abstain from voting on the application before us.
I accept you abstaining from this vote, and then your abstaining from this vote will then move forward as well. So I say that because at this juncture, we do not have a majority of the board present to be able to vote on this item. We did hear from Maureen. She said she had a conflict. Darren said he had a conflict as well. We have not heard, obviously, Tim has been abstaining as well. We've not heard from Ed and our other planning board member. So at this point in time, we only have 3 members. We no longer have a majority vote at this point in time. So I guess we would call for an adjournment. Unless Mike, you've got anything additional you'd like to share?
I think two things. First, you'd asked before we started, to confirm that what the number of people that would need to pass, and it's section 2-469 of the ordinance says that a concurring vote of at least 4 members shall be necessary to authorize any action by the board. And so that means that 4 of you would have to agree for the board to do anything. So any motion, so you have a quorum, so the meeting can start. Any action, if one of you abstains, wouldn't have for a concurring vote of 4 members. The second thing is on the abstention. It's the policy reads that the board will vote to determine if there's a conflict or bias.
Okay,
So it's often the case that a member can abstain in terms of their judgment, but the procedures here do require a vote.
but we don't have a quorum of the board.
You don't, well, I guess, I mean, that's, you either. Right, as it would work out, you wouldn't overrule his decision, with just 4 of you, so.
And if let's say we voted and it was 3-1 or 2-2 or whatever it was. And then the board didn't act on it again. What are the implications of that?
So. Starting from kind of the basics of parliamentary procedure, there's an application before you. The public hearing is now open. When the public hearing is closed, the application is before you. And somebody makes a motion, and if there's not 4 votes, no motion can carry, other than a motion to adjourn. So it will remain on the table if nobody comes in the door and you continue to decide to abstain. You do have enough, you can close the public hearing. And that would start a clock 30 or 35 days at which the board needs to act after the public hearing is closed. And so if that hasn't happened, the board would have been deemed to act, and that would give rise to the ability to appeal.
So at this juncture, we still have this project in front of us, correct? Can't make a motion. So at this point in time, since it feels like a null and void meeting, it will be on the next planning board agenda.
Yes, another option could be, we could recess for like 10 minutes and call Bilal and Ed and see if either one of them can make it.
Sure.
You've not contacted them, so I don't know why they're here.
Or to continue to have the public hearing part and choose to end the public hearing, which would then at the next meeting, the matter would still be before the board for deliberation. But at that point, you couldn't take any more information from the public, except in response to a question from them.
I gotta be honest with you, I am trying to go that route, though understanding the board and wanting to be respectful of the board and their consideration, not knowing why they're not here. I can imagine that Ed would want to hear and Maureen would want to hear and others would want to hear the public. So just out of respect for them, I would probably choose not to do that.
So do we need to vote to
We can't
accept his extension?
It's either, you should.
Oh, we should.
I mean, why don't we not assume?
Okay,
Either that passes 4-0, and then there's only 3 members to vote on an action item. Or one of you disagrees and it fails and we're back there.
does someone want to make a motion?
I guess I have a question. You know, I'm abstaining from the vote up or down with respect to the project as a whole. But for voting for a procedural matter,
Well, people may be familiar with the statute on conflict of interest, which deals with a very narrow definition of financial conflicts of interest. Or the appearance of a conflict of interest. Which is not defined and it can be broader. Under the statute, it would simply be your choice. That the statute doesn't put that to the vote of the board. The procedure does. And so so I guess the question for you is the procedure talks about, there's a couple, there's a financial or a special interest is one type of a board member who believes that he or she has a financial or special interest other than the interest held generally. Or bias that relates to any agenda item before the board. It sounded like what I heard you say was about the bias. If that's of those two.
And Mike, I'm not sure if you heard this, so I'll make sure, because he started out with some, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
He started out by saying that there were some of the items. Ultimately, what I heard, and maybe you can correct us if I'm wrong, he's not happy with what happened years ago with the Zoom.
Understood.
Okay,
Yeah,
I just wanna make sure you
understood.
understand. So fundamentally, it's not the project, it's fundamentally the zone change, how it happened.
Right.
And I think we have to be very conscientious about that, and I applaud you for coming forward and saying you cannot objectively look at this project based upon previous administrative actions or the
Right.
administration before's action. And that you cannot move forward because of that. I applaud you for putting that bias out there.
So I guess the so. But. You have two different choices of why you're abstaining. If you're abstaining under the rules, it puts it to a vote. If you're abstaining under the statute, it could either be for a financial interest, which is not what you spoke to, or it could be, this isn't the statute. Every municipal official shall attempt to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest by disclosure or by abstention. So that gives you the choice if that's why you're doing it.
I don't see this, I don't have conflict of interest. You know, I think actually we all received, you know, from.
Thank you for the reminder. I didn't either.
I guess I receiving this letter from essentially staff, as we all did, and we're all reminded that, and I think, I guess it's levels of bias. I think we all come with some sort of bias reflected on all because we come with some understanding from where it comes from. So I guess I don't see that I'm really putting this forth as a conflict of interest. It's just bias.
Yeah.
Because my knowledge of how this all came about, and I just it has tainted my objectivity to a sense. So
Sure, Adam.
Well, we were subject to an ethics review of the 555 core thing. And the result of that was there was a perceived financial bias, but legally was not past the perimeter of violating any financial bias. But the result of the report was that because of the perceived bias, it would have been the correct move for that member to have accused themselves. So if there's even a perceived bias, I think you have the right to accuse yourself.
and I guess the question, is there a difference between abstaining as recused?
I think the not that I'm aware of under the procedure, as I think about them, recusal would be you'd leave the room and just you hold yourself away, whereas abstaining is you're here but you're not taking part.
And I guess this is a broader issue because it's unfortunate that whatever project comes before us, we do bring some feelings to it.
That's right.
And I guess and you know, one of our members recused himself and stepped away. I didn't choose to do that because I felt I still needed to be part of the dialogue. And I thought it was important to recognize the ins and outs, the larger knowledge. Otherwise, we're handcuffed. So I think that we all need to be part of the dialogue. In the end, yes, if we feel we can't be objective, then yes,
Right.
abstain. So I see a difference between recuse and abstain.
You're not required to be fully objective. You're required to be able to kind of come as a member of the public and consider the items before you. Everybody comes with their own perceptions and experience. And it speaks to that in the financial part, and this is not about the bias piece, but I do think it's helpful. It's if a member believes that he has a financial or special interest other than an interest held by the public generally in any agenda item before the board. So that often comes up in another context in terms of taxes. Said, well, I pay taxes, or I have a particularly large building in this type of, and that makes me biased because if the taxes go up, I'm gonna pay more. That is the type of perspective that the public wants reflected, and it's held by the public as a whole. I don't know, it's for you to judge whether or not what brings you here is unique to you in a way that's not by the public as a whole. But there's a separate issue that I hear you saying, which is because of a process that happened in the past that you think is defective, there's a piece of current law that you're not comfortable with. And that's particularly hard on a planning board rather than a city council, for example, where there's more discretion, policymaking authority. Here, you're almost a judge. You have to apply the ordinance as it's drafted. So I
was already there in my head. Yeah, that's a different issue too.
and I guess it raises the issue of it's not just about this property. It's not just about this because this happens to be in the zone. It's any property that comes. So I guess that's an observation and not you clearly have thought a lot about this.
I'm of the same feeling is if other things come up in the form-based code, are you gonna abstain?
Was this necessarily part of the form-based code or just the rezoning of the Washington Ave?
Well,
But like you said, these are the rules that we have to go by right now with the zones. And you signed up to follow that. Will there be a bias in other projects? I'm just getting, I liked what you said, and that's where my head was. Is it gonna come up every time a project comes up in the form-based code?
I would say no.
And maybe abstention from a vote is different, would be a better move than recusing yourself, if this just there's no particular.
Yeah, this particular. I do have trouble with the form-based code. It used as it where we're taking essentially a downtown code, placed it in on an area and staying with the same language. And it's a misfit. And you know, if a form-based code was applied to an area, given a name that's appropriate and a purpose that's appropriate. So I think I'm gonna have difficulty with it, yes, but not in its entirety. I really have strong feelings with respect to this particular area because it is on Washington Street. We've recognized the design of the rotary has to be fixed. We understand the whole debate now between the southbound and northbound, whether that should be split and have two-way traffic on both. And, you know, just the idea that this particular area is considered downtown, I have a real problem there.
So just real quick, I just want to say public and applicant, if you guys feel free to stay, feel free to, if you guys would like to exit. Little housekeeping items here, so.
Why would we be exiting?
I'm sorry,
Why would we be exiting?
feel free to leave if you would like, feel free to stay if you would like. I'm just offering you that in case you did not feel comfortable exiting during this discussion.
And I think in terms of. There's. You could have chosen not to come tonight as well. And which would have had the same effect of not being available to vote. So I think there's a. I guess that should too much to take. So I would recommend a vote. However it goes, and then if that's still kind of where you are or something, you.
Does he vote? Okay, all right,
If it's, he would vote, yeah, 1 second. He would vote because it's as I'm hearing you, it's a perception of bias under the rules. Not in the statute, so because it's under the rules, there's a vote, and he's not yet abstained.
okay,
Or determined to be biased, which is
Gotcha.
the word.
okay,
So hypothetically, let's say, he votes, but like they have to go through each criteria, right? Could he abstain on any one of the criteria?
no, he's.
Not
it's
abstain.
It's not the criteria that he hasn't issued, no.
Okay, well, I was just saying there's one that says like will not adversely affect the character, so I didn't know if like he could just abstain on that one item, because that's the one he has kind of a bias
It's
with.
a larger issue.
Yeah.
If he could be partial to the rest.
I mean, it's a weird situation where somebody can come forward.
And it's on his way. Sorry. Dave just texted.
How far away is he?
He lives on Marston Hill Road. so
Okay.
10 minutes.
I do not believe we need to wait for Ed for him to abstain for us for that vote. Okay,
Right, I like that makes, and it doesn't, and abstaining, as long as you remain, doesn't affect the quorum. It would affect how many votes are available to pass.
okay, perfect. All right. So at this juncture, I will ask for a motion regarding Bob Hayes's request to abstain from this vote of Brickyard Commons.
I'll second it.
No, I'm asking for a motion.
I'll make a motion for Bob to abstain from this vote on Brickyard Commons.
Okay, do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, do you have discussion of the motion? No discussion, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries.
So,
Does it look for? We need four for TV.
We do,
it doesn't, I mean, the
that's what I, yeah,
Bob could walk out and the quorum is killed. Do you wanna go forward with, so you have another member coming, do you wanna go forward with a public hearing?
we should wait for Ed and we can go forward. Okay, yes, absolutely. Because in theory, we should have had all members there.
Yes.
In theory, so, it's unfortunate that, not sure what happened.
So we make I make a motion for a 10-minute recess until Ed shows up.
I will second that motion. All those in favor? Motion carries. She needs some water.
They called and then.
I'm just gonna call to order. Okay, so I'm going to call back to order this special meeting of the Auburn Maine Planning Board, June 18th, 2025. I would like to acknowledge, we already did roll call with Bob, Riley, Paul and myself, and we now had, Ed Bear joining us as well. And just to catch you up, Ed, Bob has abstained from, this motion. The four of us, we had a motion to accept his abstainment with one decline, which was Paul. Great. So at this juncture, we still have a quorum. I will seek a motion to open up public hearing.
So.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? I don't, what do you think? All right, so I will open up public hearing. Please come to the front, state your name, your address, your resident address, and then 5 minutes you have to address the board. What we will do is we will, listen, we will write down your questions, and then we will address with staff and the applicant. So feel free to come forward. And just as a reminder, when you come forward to address the board, it is regarding public hearing site plan review for the Brickyard Commons.
Because of the unusual arrangements here, I'm gonna bring my chair around, so I won't actually be looking down 3 feet to my nose.
Now you're starting your 5 minutes, or?
It's Stephen Beal, I have residence addresses at 93A Shepley Street in Auburn and 462 Auburn Hall Road in Durham. I also have another address that I frequently refer to in these proceedings of 575 Johnson Road in Auburn. In May, the planning board deferred action to the June meeting and requested that the applicant provide hydrologic and soil studies so that the board could have a fuller package of information on which to base its decision. The applicant, in response to that, did not provide a hydrogeologic study or a soil study, but instead provided a trove of documents to the planning staff, which I understood purported to make the need for further testing unnecessary with this offering of documents. I've prepared a fairly extensive review of the documents which were provided, which I understand that the board has received in writing as well as electronically by a couple of different methods. And I won't go into all of the detail of those at this time, but I will refer to a couple of them. The basic problem with this bunch of documents is that they're all too old and don't answer the core question. The core question is there any discharge or drainage or leakage, seepage from the safe handling site that flows downgrade or otherwise to the applicant's site? And I believe that that question remains unanswered. The entire St. Germain study, which is the only one that's of any relevance to almost all of these issues, is 17 years old. And there was no continuing monitoring or ongoing study. They were just one-time core borings and analysis and measurements during the summer of 2008. There were some findings that were relevant. The soils are almost entirely sand and silty clay. They're mostly level throughout the parcel with a bit of a decrease to the east, looking from west to east. And in figure 4, this shows that there is, however, a somewhat of a steeper decline going from north to south, and this axis is incorrectly stated as east to west. Again, it's a duplicate, it's a mistake. The correct axis is north to south as stated in the St. Germain report. That shows a decline toward the Brickyard Circle parcel. And so no one knows what happens when these spill results, these discharges went into all of this almost purely sand and silt soil. The indication is that at the very eastern end, it would drain to the east, but all the rest of it is on a fairly level plain from west to about 2/3 of the way across the parcel, but it does decline going toward the north toward Brickyard. And the pattern of soils on the applicant's parcel is significantly different. It's a combination of some silt, some clay, some glacial till, some ledge. Much of that ledge has been in an area that has been blasted not far away when the railroad track was put through there. And again, when Washington Street South was built in 1958 to 1950. The effects of the blasting in that area is unknown on the soils and the pattern of flow. There were no hydrology or soils tests performed by Summit when it did its 2022 soil digs on the site. Those were primarily for purposes of deciding where to put structures. There is no consistent pattern in the soils there. There is bedrock as recently or as shallow as 3 feet on one hole. And there was another hole that there was no bedrock found. But there's different layers of clay and ledge, and different, water was reached at significantly different levels. One is shallow as 3 feet, and one, some didn't have any water at all. The elevations on the applicant site range from 232 feet at the highest level down to 207 feet. Whereas the elevation of the safe handling parcel is a fairly consistent 222 to 226 feet. The whole body of information that has been provided just simply doesn't answer the core question: where does the water flow go?
Thank you,
or the
sir, for your
effluent
time. We
flow
do
go?
appreciate it. Yep,
Great.
I appreciate it, sir.
Good evening, I'm Renee Cody, and I live at 54 Dawes Avenue in Auburn. We've received the written submission from Mr. Beal that I hope you've had time to look at, of the 9 points there, and also, a written submission from Ms. LaRose. And we just heard Mr. Beal's public comments regarding the relevance of site work done in 2008. Offered by the applicant in 2025 as assurance that the parcel being considered for permitting does not require the hydrogeologic testing and soil analysis requested by the planning board on May 13. And that 4-3 vote taken at the meeting remains in place, regardless of this attempt to change the procedure. There's nothing new in the extensive materials provided by the mainland consultants. This really daunting pile of documents that messed up the filing. It allowed the applicant to spend a great deal of time at our June 10 meeting on visuals, including those visuals from the 2008 site work. And I will repeat something that Mr. Beal said. Really, the basic question hasn't been answered. Are there pollutants emanating from the Savage safe handling site and flowing underground into the Gendron parcel? It's just unanswered by this latest document dump. I think there's a clear basis here to require the applicant to submit the testing that was requested at the May 13th meeting as a condition of permitting. It's the board's obligation to consider the health and safety of potential residents at the proposed development. Concerns were raised about delay, and I again highlight the fact that any delay in this permitting process was caused by the applicant's attempt over the past 3 years to sell this parcel. And further, the applicant informed this body at the last meeting that a similar sale is contemplated currently, meaning that it will be an unknown third party who would be developing this site if the permit is received. And at this point, I would just add that The recusal, abstention, however you want to look at it, of two members of this board, I think speaks to the contentiousness of the project, and I would not take that lightly. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Marcel LaRose, 47 Brickyard Circle, 53 Brickyard Circle. Another parcel is 0 Brickyard Circle, out of this point. I've lived there since 1957. I've seen a lot around there. I was also the maintenance manager at Safe Handling, 99 to 2001. Seen a lot of spills. Currently, you cannot see data online, the spills for the last 9 years. But prior to that, from 98 to 2016, there were a little over 100 spills. Protract that out to this today, that's about 201 spills. Mr. Gatto from stated that out of all those that were available to be viewed, there was nothing really significant. But there was a significance because of the chemicals that are brought into that facility are such a concentration that one drop of peroxide, and I said this at the last meeting, would start this carpet on fire. I invite Mr. Gatto to take a cupful, put it in the swimming pool. Go for a swim. I want to watch. There's hydrogen peroxide, there is chemicals that would create chlorine gas. Chlorine gas, there's a reason why the supermarkets don't mix their Clorox and their ammonia near each other for settling. One spill can make chlorine gas, probably wipe out everybody next door. Now, there is a significance to the public's health. We have ordinance, and there's a section 1304B in regards to the board's obligation to ensure that the public is not placed in such hazardous areas in conditions unknowingly. Water does run through that site. There was running water through there today. Mr. Gatto said there was nothing good that goes through there. There's a ditch that runs alongside of that old pole yard. Runs right through the front of that entrance area. Albeit it's just the entrance area, but it's still part of the section of that they want to develop, and it still falls under the whole plan. Now, out of those 120 spills that were recorded, I'd like to read one of them. And it is report 370-2 P-370-2015. Well, after all these studies, St. Germain's testing and all that. In the narrative, and I'll read the narrative. Discharge of approximately 3 gallons of hydrogen peroxide, 70%, resulted when a tank trailer was overfilled by a rail car. The discharge was confined to containment and diluted with a large amount of rainwater. What would have happened if it would have been an arid day? That spill was washed away because of rainwater. This is the kind of spill containment and procedures they have at times to take care of their spills. Another one, P-703-2006. It was an incident with Safety Clean. They picked up all the chemicals of the garages and people wanted to get rid of for their cleaning supplies. PCBs, forever chemicals in it. Their narrative was Stephen Brzezinski of Maine Department of DEP performed a brief site check on this fuel transfer location to the cleanup of a past oil spill and repair the damage, to the repair of damage spill containment. The containment area is composed of asphalt paving material with a berm about 6 inches high. The area and height of the berm does not appear to be large enough to contain the contents of either a tank trailer that parks there for loading or nor a railroad tank car. The asphalt paving is degradable by petroleum discharges. Note, and there was a photo, I don't have the photo. Note that, he could not find a record that the discharge was reported to Maine as required. So this spill was found by the DEP on site surprise visit or whatever it was. And it wasn't even reported. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these.
Thank you, sir.
Are we gonna let the public sit there and get killed, maimed?
We appreciate your comments, sir.
I'd like to request another 5 minutes.
No, sir, no, we don't,
It's
no.
allowed under the rules.
We are not, it's 5 minutes for the public at this point in time.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public like to come forward? Nobody saying none, I would take a motion to close public comment.
So,
Do you have a second?
second.
All those in favor?
Okay, before, just to be clear, you're closing the public hearing.
Yes, yes, thank you. Would you like another motion?
You could just do a friendly amendment to that.
Okay, friendly amendment. We are closing the public hearing.
So,
Thank you. Second?
second.
All right, all those in favor? Okay. All right, so we heard from the public.
And I suggest that maybe you take up the abstention now, before the deliberation begins.
We can take up the.
Because Mr. Hayes brought forward and argued he should be abstained, he should abstain under the procedure. It didn't carry because there was only 3-1.
Oh, I thought you said it
It
did.
needs to be 4. No, I'm sorry, and so that's, he hasn't yet abstained.
Okay,
If you-
so I feel like in the very beginning, that is what we heard.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. All right,
I
so,
make a motion for, Bob to be able to abstain from this deliberation and vote on this project.
I second it. Do you have discussion of the motion?
I'd like to, is I was abstaining from the vote. Not discussion.
I don't think you can have it both ways.
Okay.
Are you checking?
I am looking, yes. One of the things that while I'm looking for this, one of the things that I did find was the
And I think that's the question, the difference between,
recusal and abstention. The reference to a recusal is in the ex parte communication discussion. And so if a member has conversation outside of here, he or she excuses themselves, and that's not cited to a vote. The abstention is cited to a vote.
I think the question is whether a member who
That's right.
wishes to abstain can participate in discussion, but then not vote.
Any member who is excused, so the board will vote to determine if there was a conflict/bias. Any member who is excused shall surrender his/her seat and either leave the chamber or sit in the back of the room.
Okay,
And such shall not communicate with other members of the board who are acting upon the application. So no, you would not be able to participate.
so we have a motion, to have Bob abstain from this motion, this review. I seconded. We just had a discussion. Any further discussion before I call for a vote?
I guess my only further question would be of Mr. Hayes, now that he knows that he can't participate in the deliberation, does he still want to abstain?
yes,
Okay, all those in favor? Okay, all those opposed? Bob, you didn't vote to vote because he voted the first time.
Or he can abstain from the vote and still carries.
Okay, all right, thank you. Alrighty. So we heard a lot of public comment, some of it. We have heard previously, but I still feel like, right, we offered the opportunity to review. So I will open it up to staff. Or not staff, I'm sorry, the planning board for discussion, questions.
I guess my opinion on it is that between the materials that are presented a week ago and materials and some of the inconsistencies with the compass rose and elevations, I would still feel more comfortable if a hydrological survey was carried out.
Okay.
That's my thoughts on it.
What would you hope to find out?
If there were contaminants if there were forever chemicals that would be going into Taylor Brook during the destruction of this earth.
So do you think the geology has changed since the study was done?
No, but the maps that we saw last week did have an incorrect direction. There is elevation in the safe handling that is above this property, and so due to that and how water flows, I would just feel more comfortable having that carried out.
I didn't see that. Do you know where it was that you saw that?
Yes, yes, it's part of it's presented to the public, it was part of the public comment, so that's submitted by Mr. Beal, and so it is. And we can have it pulled up, can't we?
Pull up Mr. Beal's comments or?
Yeah. The Beal's comments, actually, I can,
And then where is it in the packet that it shows that's in the system?
Was it the one he submitted for this meeting or a previous meeting?
this meeting, the one you just held up just now, that is public comment there. That is not an response, I'm sorry, it was just the neg graph you said, so if that's not being able to be considered, then I don't have any merit to that statement. Because I wasn't actually included in this.
You can take oral testimonies.
Okay.
Sure, that's in the record.
Okay.
I'm sure, could we ask Mr. Deal what plan he was referencing so that if we do have it, we can at least look at it?
Sure.
I was referring in more general terms to figure 2, the site plan that had been provided by the applicant in this most recent document dump. And also to figures 3 and 4, which are respectively the cross section of the elevations. Figure 3 being from west to east on the parcel, and figure 4 being from south to north on the parcels.
So let me restate, I don't think the compass road was wrong, I think the west to east part is not included in that.
Is the reference on figure 4 is a duplicate and says west to east, but if you read the Saint Germain report, it's clear that figure 4 is supposed to be depicting south to north. Somebody who was doing the figures just didn't change the labels when they were clearly measuring different directions.
Okay, we're gonna pause real quick on that. Thank you. We appreciate it. Applicant,
Yeah, so he's talking about figures 3 and 4 in the Saint Germain report, and figure 4, like you said, is the cross section from north to south. I think it's a couple more pages down there. Right, yep, you're coming 2 more pages. There you go. So figure 4 there is north to south, showing, relatively flat with kind of a depression there toward that's mislabeled. On the left, it should be south, and the north, it should be, or sorry, on the east, on the right, it should be north. So relatively flat running north-south with kind of a low depression there on the northern side. And then the previous figure.
So so is that the safe handling parcel?
Yes, this is a north-south cross section.
So the north should be where east is.
North should be where east is, and our project is to the north
Of that,
east of the.
right, so if we kept going northerly, we would reach your property.
Right, and then you go up to our property from there.
And is that line, the furthest line to the right, is that your property, is that safe handling's boundary, or how far, if not, how far is that? from
You go up to. You'll see the BB there, that's generally running north to south. So that's right at the property line between the railroad and the safe handling site.
I see AA, I don't see BB.
It's right up here.
It's right where the mouse is, yeah.
Oh, okay. And what does that depict again?
The cross section on the, just,
So the in the cross sections, it's showing, you know, both the surface profile on the surface of the earth, if you go back down to figure 3 and 4. And where the groundwater is running, which is kind of between that sand and silt layer and the clay sand layer. So this one again is north-south, north being on the right. And then the previous figure 3 is showing where the releases of the groundwater heading to the east. Generally away from the project site for groundwater, and for surface water as well.
And if you can go back to figure 1. It's down a little bit more if you can. No,
Figure 3.
figure,
This one?
no, up,
Oh, there you go.
one more, figure 2. Sorry, sorry. Can you go up a little bit more so we see the top? That gully on the other side of the railroad track opposite D is west of our property. And that's the low spot that I suggested at one of the meetings where surface water could drain from their surface around our site into the ravine. So this cross section is not, this is west of us. Ours bumps up. If we wanna go to one of the old topographic plans, we can show that better. But our site bumps up as you go east. We walked on top of the knob when we walked that site. So that is a ravine, but the groundwater is lower. And the groundwater study says the groundwater is going in the opposite direction. So the contaminants are going down if they're going anywhere, and then southeast away from the tracks. To the Little Amscar.
Yeah, across those railroad tracks from the safe handling site is an unnamed tributary to Taylor Brook. So it never goes on to the project site, it goes up and around next to Taylor Brook, drains out that way surface wise.
my concern is the elevation, even I know that the groundwater should go in that direction, but if there is elevation in that safe handling site that is above. Elevation wise, the project site, then I would, just in case the water can go a lot of ways. It's not expected to go, that's what I feel. If the safe handling site is all lower elevation than the Brickyard Circle site, then I wouldn't feel that same way.
This is too thick.
Yeah, I mean, there's a layer of bedrock that's running, down, basically, up and down through the center of that aerial, picture there. Perpendicular to the profile that I cut, that's at about 10 feet higher than the safe handling. I will note that they did, blast through the bedrock, as Peter said, to create the railroad. Steve, sorry. And so that's at elevation 220. Most of our site is at 220 to 230. Right near the entrance where we come in, it ducks down to about 210. At the entryway.
Is any of the earth that's gonna be disturbed for this construction below the elevation of the safe handling site?
Yeah.
So that would be why I would be inclined to.
Yeah, it's
say obviously it's
300 or 400 feet away.
Natalie, can you pull up the grading plan?
Is it on your flash drive?
Yes, it is on my, stick,
Or is it easily, do you kind of know where it is in your packet? Was it stuff that you submitted before this meeting?
It's something we submitted for, but if you go to my stick and you look at the submittal for March 24th, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is a fun computer because it's got like no tower, so everything goes in the back.
Yeah, so if you look at the, if you look at the submittal at the end of this, submittal of 324. And go all the way down the end, you'll see the plan set. Almost to the end, yeah.
Thank you for being so organized. Makes my job a
And
little
if
easier.
okay, you can use. Let's go to the grading plan, let's go.
Just tell me when to stop.
So. Yeah, right there.
Okay.
Can I come to the screen, is that right?
So this is an owl and it actually tracks anyone in the room who's talking, so.
Excellent. The section B that we were talking about on the St. Germain report is ending opposite this ravine over here. There's two ravines coming in here. And our elevations at here are at 231, and the design grade is 227. 228, 6, 227, 226 along the railroad track. So we're up at 226. Their site is about, that grade or lower when we blast it down.
So that railroad track is. What, 10 or 15 feet below the grade of it, and it's a ravine that runs all the way to Taylor Brook, right?
There's a,
Almost all the way, right? If I remember correctly from the site as well.
let's go to the, plan up, one up. I get it. So this is the railroad track cut.
Yeah.
220 is on the slope there, so it's 216. So there is upward grade to 220. Sorry, I can't read those numbers. 226, I think. Is it possible to blow it up?
Yes, sorry.
There we go. Oh, yeah, that's even clearer. 227. Looking for contour line, this is draining down, as Mr. LaRose says, this drains down the railroad track between the ledge cut to Washington Street and down around through the culvert down here. So it's going, the drainage from that site, surface drainage from that site can go around there. And if we go back to the other one, it can go around the other end. So the surface drainage can. Okay, the groundwater, let's go to the next one down. The groundwater is going southeasterly towards the river from the tracks. So what, there's another plan. I don't know if it gets graded, but this is the hump. The drainage where you saw B goes through this area here. So it's going around that low spot you saw.
Yeah, so the meeting last week convinced me that we didn't need an hydrological survey, but then reading that there's land that is higher elevation than the land you're gonna disturb that has the chemical safe handling site on it, gave me a concern. So what you're saying is that the railroad bed is not only where the surface water would go, but the groundwater goes south and away.
Goes the other way. So if we May 6th, I'm sorry, my notes are over there, May 6th, I believe it's, we go to the May 6th. May 6th, middle. Go back, yeah. May 6th, yeah. And go to GIS.
And zoom in, or are you good at this view?
No, I think for purposes of here's the tracks.
Yeah.
You recall that B, if we go back to that graphic, the B was headed towards this ravine. Here's the second ravine, okay? We're up at 230 to 227. This is 226 in the site. That's why the profile on the St. Germain dipped as it came into B, because there's a surface drainage going that way. This is a big ledge knob and a big ledge cut. The tracks. Let's just make sure I can't read it. Okay, this is 210 down here. This is 220 by the look, so this must be 220. So the tracks are going down this way into Washington Street, across the front of ours down into the, as Mr. Lauro said.
So it's 220 at the tracks.
It's
And you're not-
220 at the tracks right here.
Yeah.
222, 224, 226, 210. 210 going into the ravine.
And so your plan doesn't disturb below
Those grades.
220.
It does over here when we access the site, but we're blocked by the ledge. So again, the groundwater. I don't see the knot there, but the groundwater, I'm assuming it's straight up the sheet. Can you?
I don't see it on.
Uh,
Oh, wait, is it in this corner?
what a dummy, we didn't put a knot there. Knot, I believe it's straight up the sheet, I'm pretty sure, it's straight up the sheet. The groundwater based on the St. Germain study is well below grade and draining towards the Little Anscombe River. So contaminants laning in the Gantrick area. First of all, today have spill prevention. A containment. And then they would go into the ground but the St. Germain study said that there was, the groundwater testing that was done did not see drinking water standards. So we have ledge knob stopping that groundwater flow. Groundwater flows this way, surface water on the top is going over towards the brook.
Okay, so if you're not gonna disturb below the grade of what the train track is at any point until the entrance to the site.
It's correct.
Well, even at the entrance to the site, you won't below the railroad.
Will be 210. I'm going from memory, I believe it's 210.
Yeah,
We go back to the plan, we're, the road here is about 210 to 208. And we're bringing it up to 210 because we're trying to get above the floodplain at 205.
And the railroad in that vicinity is at 210 as well.
The 210 contour is up here at the intersection of Brickyard, and it looks like it comes up into the ditch. But we're gonna have this road going up all the way, so if you wanna go back to, the design plans, you know, already keep.
This one? Or? so-
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you go to the next one up, I think. Can you clear that? There's all kinds of numbers that just can't read. Oh, whatever you did,
Good or bad?
that's better, 210. Oh, no, wait a minute. That is hard to read. We have 208, 207. 208, 209, 210. I'm sorry, I can't read these numbers.
And I can't. Do it one more time?
Okay, 210, 211.
Mr.
209.
Gatto, you have
208.
glasses hanging from your.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're blurry. It's not, I can put my glasses on, but It's still work. Cause those are readings.
Trying to help you.
Yeah, no, thank you. My wife does the same thing. So again. This end of the site, 214 up here at these buildings, we're staying up above, and we have the ledge knob. On the next sheet up, we have the ledge knob that gets us up to 227. The ledge face at the railroad tracks is gonna remain, because we're not touching that. In the St. Germain report, it did indicate that there's a surface water on Name Stream that goes towards Taylor Broad. And then the groundwater, much deeper, going southeastward. And that's our presence, is that we don't see if the contaminants go away from the site. And most of the reports suggest that the contaminants get tied up in the soils.
My concern was surface waters and the extraordinary weather events, the excess rain potentially carrying those down to the disturb, but if you're not gonna disturb ground that's below the elevation of the safe handling site, I guess I would retract my,
I mean, you're not wrong, Riley. I'm a little forward thinking about extreme weather. That's absolutely, you know, happening more often than not.
so I guess I would, I'll retract the statement that caused the last 20 minutes of discussion.
Due diligence, buddy. Put up.
So that was the only discussion.
That's really good. Always value opinion and conversation.
And this one would be for staff. The safe handling site is regularly monitored, tested. Not necessarily soil tests, but to make sure that they're doing their job properly and.
I don't know that we know that it is, it's regulated by DEP for all of emissions and spills out there, but so it doesn't have any.
Trusting that the state's doing their. Part of it.
And they do have a, stormwater system that is retaining all of their groundwater on site. Or I don't know about all, but there's quite an extensive, site law for that site that DEP approved and their stormwater.
And my understanding in that study was. Of the chemicals tested for, there was only one that's persistent, correct? All of the others were subject to, once they're exposed to water and air, they become, I don't know, non-reactive. Is that the?
Not sure.
I read through that St. Germain thing pretty thoroughly, and,
Yeah, the staff isn't necessarily equipped or
right.
knowledgeable on how they deal with.
So we're all relying on the experts in their fields that provide their.
That's how this whole thing works with, you know, with respect to DEP and, you know, I think, Mike brought that up as far as Savage, you know, and I think that was Savage's comments as well. They monitor themselves for spills out there. They report their spills. They would probably say that they think they're doing a good job as far as reporting what they do when they do spills out there. But as to, you know, the level of contaminants or how bad it is, that's not something that we would necessarily weigh into.
I can read that portion of the report if you wanted to hear it. Where they talk about the reactivity and.
Yeah, that would be great, because it's been a long time, but I've had a lot of science courses and stuff, and I understand a lot of what's going on there. I wouldn't be able to run a study or something, but.
Well, if you want me to just read it here or go up there.
I think you got involved, I think it's, we're looking
Stay right there.
You can go anywhere.
Michael Barnes, I'm a professional engineer with Maine Land Development Consultants. So the St. Germain report of 2008 says that the analytes for each chemical product, they had just listed the products that were used at the time at the safe handling site and the analytes associated with them. For each chemical product were chosen based on what may be detected in groundwater from potential releases of the chemicals or their reaction byproducts. Since chemicals are highly reactive with soil and groundwater, with the exception of MMA, which could persist in soil and groundwater if spilled in sufficient quantity. They list sodium chloride, sulfate are naturally persistent in groundwater and surface water, so their detection will not necessarily reflect the presence of gantry chemicals. Similar pH and conductivity are two characteristics inherent in all water and can vary widely. Under natural conditions, the gantry area is also heavily salted during the winter, representing another source of sodium chloride in the groundwater unrelated to the gantries. So, yeah, they're saying that generally these chemicals that they were using at the time are highly reactive to soil and groundwater, with the exception of MMA, which could persist.
And if they're highly reactive, what's the conclusion that I draw from that?
They break down in groundwater and soil as opposed to staying there in their chemical state.
And if they break down into what?
I don't know, I'm beyond my knowledge in chemistry, but into their subparts that are less, I guess, dangerous to the public. That's what they're saying, so.
Thank you. I have a question for staff. You've heard the neighbors' concerns, that, and I think it can be described as a concern about potential groundwater contamination of this site. And let's just say that all of that had been demonstrated. What standard is it? What standard do our review is indicated by that?
Sorry, Ed, I didn't hear your question. I heard
So-
words of it.
I understand that there's this general statement in our ordinance that protects the public health, safety and welfare, but is there a particular standard that applies here? Where there's, as I understand it, we're not gonna be drilling wells, it's gonna be a public water supply. It's a public sewer supply too, as I understand it. So I'm wondering what of the standards that we typically review and say you've met these standards, which one might potentially not be met by a concern if it were realized?
Yeah, okay, it's in our staff report too.
Yeah, so when you look through, there's 15 different criteria there that you would take into consideration if that was the finding that you were looking to make.
So that leads to another question, because as I understood the memo that we got before the last meeting, the applicant was withdrawing the portion of their application that sought subdivision review, and those are subdivision standards, aren't they?
Yes, but at the last meeting, Mr. Gatto asked that we strike that request from, well, not from there, but he withdrew that request. But
Okay.
I didn't want to submit any new staff report, so we didn't have to post this meeting again.
Oh,
So,
Okay.
so to clarify, that was, he made some reference to it. My reading of, and their, Mr. Gatto, and I'm gonna paraphrase. Mr. Gatto pointed to state statute in the site plan review statute. And said that if the subdivision statute. And said that there's an exemption from those statutes applying if the ordinance meets 4 or 5 things, and those 4 or 5 things are met by the city's site plan review ordinance.
Yeah.
So his argument was, because we're doing site plan review, we don't have to do subdivision. As I look at that, did I paraphrase fairly?
Yeah.
As I read the statute, I agree with that as to the statute.
Mhm.
So they don't have to look to the subdivision statute because there's a site plan review ordinance.
Mhm.
However, the municipality's subdivision ordinance says that the board shall consider it. And there's no indication in the ordinance that it tracks that statutory exemption. And so my reading of the statute of the ordinance is that the board has to look to both its subdivision ordinance and its site plan review ordinance.
Okay.
And we agree, let's not argue, let's do them both, because we believe we meet them all.
Guess I missed that, okay.
It was referenced, that we didn't discuss it.
So then which of these standards might we be?
These are the denial standard. So these are your for site plan, and if you need me to scroll down for the 15, let me know.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Can you scroll down here there? Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions for staff? Okay, seeing none. Let's take the motion. Oh, before I do that. And I'm elevating you to full membership
Tonight, for
tonight.
tonight. For this evening.
Next, yeah.
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 Thanks. I'm hesitant to make the motion because I don't have the staff's proposed motion in front of me. But I will say this in preparation for someone making a motion. Back at the May meeting, I encouraged the applicant to have this groundwater analysis done because my sense was that there was at least a significant number of board members who were not prepared to approve this project without it. The applicant chose to run that clock and not do that. I was not one who thought that it was necessary that it be done. Clear about that. And I haven't heard anything, additional information that leads me to believe that this site labors under any potential contamination for the joining site. I haven't heard any arguments about other issues that concern me regarding the review standards. So I would be voting in favor of a motion if one is made to approve this.
Appreciate that.
Did put the motion up on the board if anybody,
That's the first one in the list, right? Just to make sure we.
it's the one that
If,
also includes subdivision
so
review.
that's the first one.
The second one would not include subdivision review, which we which
So legal suggested doing this.
along with it, because we don't have a ordinance that allows us to accept state law.
Okay. Here goes. I make a motion that the proposal meets the requirements of section 60-550, 60-1277. And 60-1359 for a site plan review proposing 96 unit apartment complex with associated site improvements and infrastructure off Brickyard Circle, City Assessors Parcel ID 199-052-000. The proposed project should be considered pursuant to Chapter 60, Article 16, Division 2. Site plan review, Article 4, Subdivision, Article 4, Division 14, form-based code with the following conditions. A, no development activity until any bonding or inspection fees are determined by the Auburn Engineering Department. B, blasting permit in advance of blasting from the City of Auburn Planning, Permitting and Code Department. C, the construction of the left turn lane on Washington Street north to Brickyard Circle must be completed before the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for 24 units or by September 1st, 26th, whichever comes first. And D, a manual on uniform traffic control devices warning sign must be added to the Washington Street southbound approach to the existing crossover, identifying that vehicles are entering ahead before the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for any dwelling units.
And do I have a second?
So
Do I have discussion of the motion? Okay, seeing none, I will ask all those in favor of the motion. So motion carries.
Thank you very much.
So at this point in time, I will seek a motion to adjourn.
Those.
Second.
All those in favor, excellent. Motion carries. And when the cause of well, I do really appreciate it.